Hi all, in this video I will discuss about the revolution of October 1917 in the history of Russia. First, we shall see about the factors which led to the October Revolution. The first factor was the conflict between the provisional government and the Bolsheviks. There was a lot of conflict happening between the present government and one of the community of people called Bolsheviks. The union of Bolsheviks, soldiers, and workers. The story was carried on like this, such as this Bolsheviks community were united together and they had a provision or a combination of the soldiers and workers. The Bolsheviks again appointed a military revolutionary committee under Leon Trotsky to organize socialist seizure of the power. So the Bolsheviks took it step by step for the October Revolution, and the military revolutionary committee was under Leon Trotsky and he was a Bolshevik base. So these were the factors which one by one led to the October Revolution or a war. The uprising began on 24th October. Actually, the plan for a complete war started in the month of October on the 24th. The military men seized the buildings of two Bolshevik newspapers. Pro-government troops were sent to the government offices and the Winter Palace to protect it from revolutionaries. So what happened actually was the present government had to be sustained and hence the pro-government troops were sent to different government offices, and Winter Palace is a place where the kings are used to protect themselves. So to protect themselves, this was one of the move which was carried out. The military revolution committee seized government officers and arrested the ministers. Uh, This was one of the major factors which led to the October Revolution, that is, the Military Revolutionary Committee seized the entire government offices, and the Soviets in the majority approved the Bolsheviks' action. So, step by step, the Bolsheviks took over the entire power and they went step by step to accumulate everything. By the December, the whole part was ruled by Bolsheviks and it became a Petrograded area. Here you can see some of the clippings of or the photos of how the Bolsheviks were looking like. Then next we move on to what were the changes what happened after the October Revolution. After the Bolsheviks took over, these are the major changes that happened in the continent across Russia. Industry and banks were nationalized. Till date, all the banks and industries were operating on a local or a state basis. But from then, the industry and banks were becoming, Bolsheviks made it nationalized and made it all through. The land was declared social property and peasants were allowed to seize the land of mobility. So the land which was owned by the common people were no more a private property and it was called a social property, and peasants are nothing but the common people. They were allowed to seize the land of the nobility. So it was nothing like you can accumulate a more of property. Bolsheviks, the main thing what they did was ban the old titles of aristocracy. Aristocracy is a tradition in which you hereditarily get all the powers of your father and it follows on. So the Bolsheviks completely demolished that and it was for good. Bolshevik party renamed the Russian Communist Party completely. Russia withdrew was withdrawn from the World War. So they made sure that there was peace existing in society. So these were the major changes that Bolsheviks came and made in Russia. Russia became a one-party state, and criticizers were punished. So this now we can see some of the images in which the Bolsheviks took an initiative telling we want peace and not the war. So this was the way they proceeded in their revolution. Then we move on to something called the Civil War. This was another major thing that happened during the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks ordered redistribution of the land. Everything what was present was completely redistributed. Non-Bolshevik socialists, liberals, and supporters of aristocracy opposed. obviously, when Bolsheviks were doing so much, they will obviously have oppositions. That is there anywhere in the society. If something good's happening, obviously you will be raising the oppositions. Similarly, non-Bolshevik socialists, liberals, and other aristocracy people who wanted their fathers or hereditary privileges opposed the Bolsheviks' rules. So there was a fight between the Bolsheviks and the Bolsheviks were called the red and the other socialists were called the green. So obviously the fight started, and this fight was named the Civil War. The green and white were backed by French, American, British and Japanese troops. By January 20th, the Bolsheviks controlled most of the former Russian Empire. So the declaration or the conclusion was the Bolsheviks could overcome all this, and by the end of January 20th, they controlled the entire Russian Empire. So this was the power in which the Bolsheviks present. So the main goals of the Bolsheviks were making a socialist society in Russia. So nationalization of banks and industries was one of the bold steps they took. Collective work on confiscated land and the centralized planning was introduced. So all the 5 year plans and everything came into picture. So the result was there was a good economic growth in the country than the previous. When it was divided into states, we could not see such good economic growth. It extended the schooling system. There was schools which were spread all over India, not only in the state. Then cheap public healthcare was provided. Obviously, when the economic growth was improving, all these facilities were obtained by the common public. Model living quarters were set up for the workers. So this was another advantage given to the workers during Bolshevik period. Stalin and his reforms. Collectivization of agriculture, confiscation of stocks, and industrial production under planned economy was what Stalin came up with. He was one of the major Bolsheviks in the period. What is collectivization program? So the collectivization program means taking away the land from the peasants and establish state-controlled large farms. You're taking lands from private or dominant owners and making it a controllable and a large farm. So it was, for example, it there was something called a kulaks. Kulaks were nothing but uh, well-to-do peasants or well-to-do people. There was nothing called well-to-do, and equality came into picture. Peasants were forced to cultivate in collective farms, and profit was shared. First, the profit entirely was given to the peasants, but then the profits were shared. Those who resisted collectivization were severely punished. Those who still wanted the same traditional thing were seen to that they were punished. Then final or the last slide what we come from the October revolution is what was the global influence of this revolution. Whatever happens in one country, there will always be a global influence. For example, if anything happens in India or any major step taken in India will affect the neighboring or globally. For example, demonetization, what Modi did when he scrapped the 500 and 1000 rupees notes, this effect has gone throughout globally. Similarly, now we see what are the global influence on the Russian Revolution. First, in many countries, communist parties were formed. They were trying to do something like the Bolsheviks and bring about a revolution. Spread of socialism as a global face and world stature. Colonial people were encouraged to follow revolutionary steps. The normal people were encouraged and were pushed forward to take bold steps and bring up the economy. So here we come to the end of the presentation, and this video completely gives you information about the Bolsheviks period, the civilian war and the global influence. Hope you have liked this video and found it informative. Thank you.